Hey everybody, and welcome to another new video. So, I definitely wasn't expecting myself to be making another video so soon, but this week has been a crazy week for Fire Emblem Heroes. Or, at least for me it has. As I'm sure many of you are aware, there was a new banner that dropped earlier this week, the Desert Mercenaries banner, which, for those of you who don't know yet, features heroes from Fire Emblem the Sacred Stones. Thanks to Reddit, I am aware that prior to this week's banner, there hasn't been a dedicated Sacred Stones banner in literally over a year. Since January of 2018 to be exact, which is almost 2 years ago. Crazy, I know. Now, I'm not going to break down the entire banner for you all. There are tons of other YouTubers that already do that. What I want to do is focus on one specific hero, and that hero is Ross. So, a quick little backstory before we jump in. Many of my Fire Emblem friends know that my current favorite hero is Silas. Now, here's where things change. Fates has only been around since 2015, which actually sounds like a long time ago now that I'm saying it aloud. But anyway, you might be wondering, who is your favorite hero before Silas? Well, if you haven't guessed it by now, it's Ross. I had to have been in maybe 7th grade when I first played Sacred Stones, which honestly feels like eons ago. But like with any Fire Emblem game, the thing that I remember most about Sacred Stones is Ross and how much I absolutely loved his character. Much like with Silas, Ross is also incredibly devoted to someone, his dad, Garcia, who, I have to admit, I benched as soon as I got him on my first playthrough. I was a kid, and therefore it was only natural for me to pick the character I could see myself most in. Like, in my prepubescent childhood imagination, Ross was my best friend in Magville. That's how much I adored him. And that is why I am willing to do whatever it takes to make Ross into a god in Fire Emblem Heroes. So, all week long, I've been theorycrafting some builds for Ross. Unfortunately, I don't have a Ross yet because, in case you haven't seen my last video, I spent all of my orbs on the Legendary Leaf banner last week. Which, by the way, was a really good banner for me. You should totally watch that video if you get a chance. It was a good summoning session. But I digress. I've got 2 builds that I've got for you guys today. The first is my dream build, which I will say right now is very expensive. My second is a free-to-play build that is much more accessible. So without further ado, let's take a look at Ross's base kit and see what we're working with. So at 5 stars, level 40, Ross comes with the following base stats. HP 47, attack 38, speed 31, defense 32, and resistance 24. It's important to note that Ross has a super boon in HP, attack, and res. What that means is that if your Ross happens to have an asset in either one of these stats, they'll get a +4 increase as opposed to the usual +3. If that doesn't make any sense to you, honestly, feel free to drop a question below in the comments and I'd be more than happy to clarify. So, right off the bat, our boy's got some incredible base attack. 38 attack is no joke, and with a super boon, that brings it up to 42. Oh, that's hot. His speed is decent, though. I don't really expect him to be performing any follow-up attacks, but with the builds I've got for you guys, that won't even be necessary. His defense is not bad at all. He's not a tank by any means, but he'll definitely be able to take a few hits. And much like in Sacred Stones, however, I'd probably try to keep him away from magic damage. Now, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about his native skills because, aside from his weapon, they're not very useful. For any new players out there, Ross comes with a Brave Axe Plus. While it's not a new weapon to Fire Emblem Heroes, Brave weapons are great for units with high base attack, as they'll allow you to attack twice on the player phase before the enemy can counterattack. Should your hero be fast enough, he'll attack twice again during the follow-up. Definitely a solid base weapon for Ross. For his assist skill, he comes with Smite, which isn't bad really. I will always have a preference for reposition because I personally love to slingshot my units across the map, but Smite isn't super common. Right now within the 3 and 4 star pool, the only units to come with it are Barter? I'm sorry, I always butcher his name. Barter? Let's call him Barter. Barter, Effie, and Mordecai. So for anyone who wants Smite, another means of obtaining it is always welcome. Cheers. Now for his A slot, Ross comes with Fire Boost. I'll leave the description up for you guys to see. With his base HP, which is actually pretty high by the way, Ross has a pretty good chance of activating Fire Boost. The problem is that there are so many other A skills that are more consistent or simply better at boosting his already high base attack, so we're gonna get rid of it. Similarly, for a C skill, Ross comes with Threat and Defense 3. Again, much like Fire Boost, there are tons of other C skills that either do a better job at debuffing the enemy, or might simply be more useful overall. This one's going away too. So that's it for his base kit. The skills are pretty lackluster, but what can you expect from a 3-star unit? At the end of the day though, it's his base stats that ultimately matter most, and because they are so good, there's quite a bit of room for creativity as far as deciding on how to build him. Let's get into it. So, like I mentioned before, my first build for Ross is my dream build. It's a very expensive build, and it's the build that I will be working towards, but that's because there is no limit to how far I am willing to go to pamper my favorite units. So, for both of these builds, we're going to assume that Ross is rocking that super boon in attack. So with that, and his native Brave Axe Plus, his attack comes up to 50. Keep in mind, of course, that this also brings his speed down to 26. For his assist skill, Reposition. It's great and reliable. Not much to be said there. For his special, I'm giving him Gale Force because I really want him to have the spotlight and to really raise some hell on the player phase. For any new players out there, Gale Force allows Ross to make another action after combat during the player phase. The challenge with Gale Force, however, is getting it to activate. Gale Force has a cooldown charge of 5, which, under normal circumstances, is very high and takes long to activate. But thanks to the rest of his skills in this build, activating Gale Force is going to come very easily to Ross. So, for his ace skill, I'm giving Ross Heavy Blade 4, which is a premium skill that was just introduced on this exact same banner via Duo Ephraim. With his high base attack, Ross shouldn't have very much difficulty activating Heavy Blade 4, which grants him a +1 special cooldown charge and +5 damage for each of his attacks. And because his Brave Axe Plus allows him to attack twice without interruption, Ross can get 4 special charges per each initiation on the player phase, which is insane. And that doesn't even factor in the +10 raw damage that gets stacked on top thanks to Heavy Blade 4's effect. For his B skill, I decided to give him Lull Attack Defense 3. I was originally going to give him Quick Riposte to help him follow up on the enemy phase, but if I already have to fodder off a Duo Ephraim for Heavy Blade 4, I might as well just nab Lull Attack Defense 3 while I'm at it. I have a spare Ike lying around with Heavy Blade 1, 2, and 3, so I figured why not. Lull Attack Defense 3 is a great skill to have for 2 reasons. 1, it provides an automatic in-combat debuff on the enemy, and 2, it neutralizes any out-of-combat bonuses to the opponent's attack and defense. This is particularly important for Ross because by negating any enemy buffs, it'll give him a better chance of having a higher attack and activating Heavy Blade. For his C skill, I decided on giving Ross Rouse Attack Defense 3. Another fairly premium skill that, as of right now, can only be found on Edelgard. It has a fairly easy skill requirement to meet. As long as Ross doesn't have any allies adjacent to him, he'll get his attack and defense buffed by 6. Considering he's going to be Gale Forcing around the map, I have a feeling this is going to come in handy. Lastly, for a Sacred Seal, I chose Quick Pulse. Quick Pulse is great for this build because it grants 1 special cooldown charge on turn 1. This means that at the start of every match, Ross is only going to need 4 special charges to activate Gale Force. With both his Brave Axe and Heavy Blade activated, he gets those 4 charges during his first engagement. Gale Force activates immediately afterwards, and the cycle repeats. He starts racking up charges again, and by the time he's finished his first engagement on the next turn, Gale Force is ready to reactivate. Rinse and repeat. So, that's my dream build for us. It's a weird take on a Gale Force build, but because 2 of my other units are already using Heavy Blade 3 and Quick Riposte as their Sacred Seals, I had to get kinda creative. Of course, I also recognize that not everyone's got a spare Duo Ephraim and Edelgard to fodder off, so it's not super accessible either. For that reason, let's go ahead and take a look at the budget build that I've got for Ross. So, build number 2 is a budget build I currently run on my Jerome, which I'll have demonstrate for you guys actually. It's a pretty standard Brave Axe Plus build, but it's consistent, effective, and most importantly, cheap. So, for this build, we're going to keep the Brave Axe Plus on Ross, so his attack stays the same. For a special, we've got Glimmer here. I personally love running Glimmer on a lot of my heroes. Unlike Gale Force, Glimmer only requires 2 special cooldown charges and offers substantial damage output when it activates mid-combat. For his A slot, we've got a number of options to choose from, some more accessible than others. Death Blow 4 or even Sturdy Impact would likely be your first choice, if you can get your hands on them, of course. Death Blow 4 offers a solid +8 attack during the player phase. Death Blow 3, which is of course more budget friendly, offers +6. It's also worth mentioning that I included Sturdy Impact because though it offers +6 attack instead of +8, it also offers +10 defense and prevents any enemy follow-ups as well. This is incredibly useful because should Ross fail to KO the enemy, this skill will help him tank through any physical counterattacks and prevent him from being doubled. With his middling speed, this is definitely another solid option for Ross. For his B slot, we're going to tack on Quick Riposte. Quick Riposte is nice because although Ross has fairly average speed, this will guarantee him a counterattack in the enemy phase. This is especially important because his Brave Axe will only attack once on the enemy phase, as opposed to the usual 2 on the player phase. And so, by having Quick Riposte, he'll essentially be able to get his 2 attacks in, while of course having to tank the enemy's follow-up attack. For his C slot, Ross has a lot of flexibility. Even Attack Wave is a nice budget-friendly option that gives Ross a solid +6 increase to his attack on even number turns. What's especially nice about Wave skills is that they'll also apply that same buff to any adjacent allies. Even Attack Wave can be obtained from a Fallen Delthea, which is available in the Grail shop. Lastly, for a Sacred Seal, it's necessary that we have Heavy Blade 3 on here. You're going to want Heavy Blade so that Glimmer can activate during each engagement. Remember that because of his Brave Axe, Ross attacks twice on the player phase. He gets his 2 special charges on the first attack, and then Glimmer activates on the second for some sweet increased damage. With this build, you can expect Ross to be activating Glimmer on nearly every round of combat, both during the player phase and the enemy phase. It's pretty great. So because of Ross's great stats, he's a fairly versatile unit that can be built up in a number of ways differently from what I've shown you guys. I personally love a Brave Axe build, which is why I'm okay with keeping it from Ross's base kit, but it's definitely worth mentioning that he'd also be a good candidate for a few other cookie cutter builds. With the Aether build, Ross can function very similarly to Brave Ike. Soul can be substituted in as a special in case you'd prefer a lower cooldown, but Aether is definitely preferred if you've got a Brave Lucina supporting him thanks to her weapon refine. At that point, you could also substitute his A skill for a distant counter. Ross's defenses can also be bolstered up through some premium passive skills should anyone be interested in turning him into an enemy phase tank. With a defense refine on his axe, steady stance 4, and close defense 3, Ross gains +18 defense on the enemy phase. This can further be improved on even number turns thanks to his C skill. The third build I've got here makes use of the Fire Sweep axe, which was recently introduced on this banner via Garrick. This would be an especially interesting choice for Ross as he's basically a mini Garrick, with a little less speed traded for some more attack. With perhaps Darting Blow 4 in the A slot and Darting Blow 3 in the S slot, Ross's speed could be brought up by 15 points on the player phase. With a boon in speed, he could definitely make good use of the Fire Sweep axe, and not gonna lie, I'm kinda talking myself into this build now the more I think about it. But wait, there's more! So this morning, while I was in the shower, I came up with 2 other builds for Ross that I thought I'd add into this video at the last second, just for fun. With a super boon in HP, Ross can also be an excellent candidate to run a panic-based support build. As an infantry unit, Ross has access to Infantry Pulse, which grants all allies +1 special cooldown charge at the start of a match as long as they have less HP than him. Sudden Panic is also an excellent beast skill that scales off his HP in order to debuff multiple enemies at a time. HP +5 could be a solid, cheap option for both his A skill or even his Sacred Seal, as it helps ensure that he has the highest HP on the map. The last build that I've come up with so far is a fun enemy phase Dragon Slayer build. Mystic Boost ensures that any oncoming breath attacks apply directly against his resistance and not his defense. And with a res refined Slaying Axe, Warding Stance 4 on the A slot and Warding Stance 3 as a Sacred Seal, Ross gains +18 resistance on the enemy phase. The cherry on top for this build is a special, which with a cooldown count of just 1, thanks to his Slaying Axe, he'll be activating Ruptured Sky on every enemy phase engagement and dealing up to 40% more damage on dragon-typed enemies. I am honestly quite tempted to try this out myself. It sounds really fun. So those were all the builds that I've theory crafted so far. For those of you interested in merging Ross up to plus 10, the last thing I want to show you guys is a side-by-side comparison of what his stats look like when fully merged. Because of his great base stats, and because of his availability in the 3-star and 4-star pool, Ross is an excellent candidate for a merge project. I designed both of the first 2 builds I showed you guys with these stats in mind, knowing that someday I'm probably gonna plus 10 him. And honestly, considering how many builds I've come up with so far, I might try to collect 4 different Rosses and plus 10 all of them. Who knows? Well, that's it everyone! I hope you were able to find something in this video useful. I'm not an expert at Fire Emblem Heroes by any means, nor do I consider myself very competitive in nature, but I've been playing long enough to know how to theory craft a lot of my own builds together for my favorite units. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section below. Oh! And one last thing before we wrap up the video. In case it wasn't obvious, I'm really excited about Ross being in the game. I'm actually probably gonna summoner support him once I finally get him. And so, to celebrate, I put together a cool mobile wallpaper for my phone that I thought I'd share with you guys. If anyone wants to download it and use it, I'll leave a link in the description. Just be sure to leave a thumbs up if you do, please. Anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I can't promise that I'll be doing a unit showcase for every new character, but I'll definitely be doing some for my favorites. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and happy summoning. Take care.